Letterfront with Coach. I'm Marina Hernandez, 137779.
Yes, and I'm Coach Ed Barreras. Happy to be here.
It's been a little bit.
It's been a while.
But we're here. We're here with some good interviews. It's just been a little bit.
Yeah.
To start, I just want to say thanks to Joe G. Shout out, Joe, for making this for us.
Thank you, Joe.
Isn't that cool?
That's great. That's great. I love
so his Instagram is nightsider_3D printer, or 3D printing. And he makes these on his with his 3D printers.
Amazing.
I know, pretty cool. Yeah. So, Dad, I got to show you how to use that Instagram because on there he makes a lot of different things for football teams and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Okay, I'll pass it on.
Yeah. Okay, share that.
Share it.
Okay, so we have an update. So last episode was with Angel Montes. Great episode.
Great episode.
If you haven't listened to it, definitely go back and take a listen.
Go eat the ribs at Los Tres Cochinitos.
I'm going to talk to Angel and I'm going to see if he can call it the coach. Like someone could say, can I have the coach?
Yes.
I'm going to see if I could get it named after you.
Right.
That'll be awesome. Imagine. Okay. So this is what I talked about a little bit in that episode. So I just want to give an update because I was correct. In the Daily Breeze on August 13th, it says Port of LA hit single month record with cargo surge in July. So in July, we reached an all-time record. All-time.
Wow.
That's crazy. So the executive director, Gene
Soroka, right,
said that the July total surpassing 1 million TEUs topped the last monthly record set in May 2021 by 8,000 containers. So we surpassed it by 8,000.
Wow. Great.
Shout out to our longshoremen. Heck yes. It says the port handled 1,019,837 20-foot equivalent units. So that's amazing.
That's amazing. I'm happy to see that because I really did see that there because a lot of the casuals were getting out now.
Right.
So I'm so happy when the casuals get out.
Yeah.
Casuals, you guys stick in there. Just going to be a matter of time and you'll be with us. Just be patient.
And so we didn't plan to bring this up, but Fernando, my husband, had his first day on the job at Zim, Dayside Zim,
Right.
and he was swing.
Yeah, he had a swing job and he's real conscientious. He's really,
totally.
He was there and he was telling me all about it. I said, yeah, I know. But, he's going to do a good job out there.
I agree. And he made me laugh because he was like, yeah, they said after lunch we're going below deck. He's like, what? Like he thought he was going to go on the ship and go below deck. So that's cute. That's a cute little casual thing.
Right.
Sorry, Fernando.
Right. For those of you out there going below deck, that means the lids come off and they discharge containers below the deck, below the lids.
Right. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you. We just laughed because it was cute. It's something that we say that we're just used to saying. So we know what we mean. But yeah, someone that doesn't know. So thanks for clarifying.
Right.
So another update was about the special election.
First of all, I want to shout out to all the members out there for being conscientious and protecting the union by voting yes. It was voted yes, increase in dues by 80% of you guys.
80% said yes, voted in favor.
80% voted in favor of the increase, but the increase was only $19.50 or something like that. But keep in mind now, in a couple years, it's going to happen again. So when they have you vote, make sure that you don't have any special elections. Let's get out there and in the first try, let's vote yes. We have to be the strongest union around. We are the strongest union around, but you need finances to keep it going. And the officers are going to prove to you guys that the money's well spent, and they're going to make this union, like it always has been and always will be, the strongest union in the world.
Dang, period.
That's it.
And our guest on the show is Diane Middleton, and she amazing, but she also wanted to make sure that we talked about that special election. Her episode didn't come out in time, but that was really important to her too.
Right. She texted us and she said she reached out, especially to the pensioners, and have their active members go out there and vote. And Diane Middleton, you guys are going to be amazed at the things she's going to bring to the interview. And she started way back in the 70s. She mentioned a fact that Dave Arian, she started in Detroit, representing the auto workers in Detroit, and she met Dave Arian there, and that's how they became friends. And then, she filtered her way down here, and we're very, very grateful for having her down there. And she's part now with the McCosker. Thank you,
Councilman Tim McCosker.
Thank you. Councilman Tim McCosker. I'm sorry. Tim McCosker. Got it right. She's part of his team, and she's going to make that team unbelievable. Right. She's an amazing woman.
She's a longtime lawyer. She was dubbed an honorary longshoreman. Right.
Ahead. Thank you for saying that, Marina, because we said that, Angel, you're an honorary longshoreman. Yeah, but
that was from us.
That
was from this team.
From this team right here. But Diane got it from the whole union. She's an honorary longshoreman.
Bona fide
longshoreman. And we are very, very grateful that she's on our team.
For sure. All right. So we're going to pass it over to Buddy and then get right to the show. So thanks for listening, you guys. Here we go, Buddy.
For our community spotlight, we wanted to take a moment to shout out the Avalon Arts and Cultural Alliance. If you're in the harbor area and you're looking for something creative, fun, and authentically community-driven, check out the Avalon Arts and Cultural Alliance in Wilmington, California. They've got free art classes for kids, music workshops, paint nights, even breakdancing and DJ sessions, all happening at their creative center located at 616 North Avalon Boulevard. It's all about building community through the arts. Everything that they do is local, inclusive, and totally welcoming, whether you're a parent, an artist, or someone who just wants to engage with their community. Follow them on Instagram at AvalonArtsCA to see upcoming events, or head to avalonaca.org for more information and ways to donate. Again, that's the Avalon Arts and Cultural Alliance in Wilmington, California. Go check them out and give them a follow.
Okay, I've got them thrown. All right.
I'm Diane Middleton. I've lived in San Pedro since 1978. I've been an attorney for 50 years. I spent my whole career representing longshoremen and shipyard workers. I could tell you a whole lot of stuff about myself, but I'm only going to say one thing. Proudest moment of my life was when I became an honorary member of Local 13, the 7th person since 1934.
Awesome.
Yeah, congrats. That's a big deal.
Well, you earned it. Well, all the people that I talked to, they admire you. They've known you for a long time, and you've done really well with the longshore industry.
And I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me to share with you guys and your audience.
Thank you so much for being here. I feel what an honor for you to have you here, truly. So thank you.
Let's get going.
Let's do it. So what brought you to San Pedro? Let's start early, Diane. Tell us about yourself, Diane.
Born and raised in Detroit, Italian father, Polish mother. My mother's whole family worked in the auto factories, and that was a very big factor growing up because my aunts were that first generation of women that worked in the waterfront. And of course, my grandpa on my mother's side started working at Dodge, Maine in 1917 when they still made bicycles. So he was there, and my aunts were on the picket line with him when the UAW won things like pensions, medical care in the 40s, which they never had. So I grew up in a union family, and I listened to my aunt's stories about life on the assembly line, and it made a very deep impression on me. Being born in 1943, when I came of age, my mom literally said to me, doesn't matter what grades you get in school, you're going to get married. You should learn how to cook, because that's what Italian, Polish, Catholic girls did. So I got married in 1963 when I was 19 years old. Wow. Wonderful guy, didn't work out. I always thought, I never thought about going to school. And that's a whole other story in terms of how I wound up going to college. But the bottom line is, I went to Wayne State University, which was a commuter school, not any fancy kind of college. Got my law degree. Came out west for a couple years, worked in a law firm from 73 to 78 in Detroit. And it was a very interesting law firm. We mainly represented people injured in auto steel, and nursing in the hospitals. And in those days, and still to this day, the idea of lawyers who represented injured workers on worker compensation cases, that was sort of considered the dregs of the practice, maybe a notch above or below criminal defense, but certainly nothing fancy like corporate lawyers or property lawyers. But the law firm I worked in, they believed that all the working man and woman had was their ability to get up in the morning and go earn a living. And that when they were injured, it was a very big deal. And they were entitled to the highest level of representation. And that's how I was trained. Wonderful. And that made a lasting effect. In addition, this particular law firm had the honorary distinction of being called by the international president of the UAW. We were the attorneys for all the wildcat strikers. So whenever anybody would go out, and, our lawyers in our firm would go to court and say, we need an injunction, Your Honor, to make sure these people can keep picketing. And the judge would say, well, who's your client? He'd say, we don't have a client yet, but we'll have one by 1 o'clock this afternoon. Because they represented all the hellraisers, including a group called the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. In the 60s, there were hundreds of thousands of auto workers. There were many, many African-American auto workers. There were no auto workers, black auto workers, above the rank of shop steward. So this group started that said, we got to make the UAW fair. And they said the UAW motto should be, if you ain't white, you ain't right.
What?
So they were hellraisers. And one of the members of this group of auto workers that had taken on the UAW was a guy named General Baker. He ran for the Michigan House of Representatives. I was his attorney, and a longshoreman from Southern California named Dave Arian came out there because he knew General from national committees like the National Committee to End Right to Work Laws, the National Committee to End Concessions, because this was the 60s and the 70s, and there were thousands of auto workers and other workers being laid off. So Dave came out to support General Baker in his election campaign. I met Dave, and we could say the rest is history. If Dave was here, he would say, I never asked you to come to California, but I did. So in 1978, I moved to California, to San Pedro. And Dave and I lived together for 5 years, never got married. To this day, people say, weren't you Dave Arian's wife? Clear the record, never married Dave Arian. But even though we only lived together 5 years, we were the best of buddies and political allies for 50 years. And I like to say that Norman Tuck and I were the two bookends of Dave's life, that between me and Norman, we tried to keep him on the right path and back him up whenever we could. So that's how I came to California.
Wow. So what was it that you saw in him that attracted you to him to come here? Because you made a big move, because you must have saw some potential for yourself as well, I would assume.
Very good question. Nobody's ever really asked it that way. I was ready to make a move, from Detroit, where things were kind of locked in terms of the firm I was in. I had been there for a number of years. I was a managing partner. This was something new. And when I listened to Dave's stories, we could say the twinkle in your eye and blah, blah, blah. Let's not talk about romance and love, but I will talk about shared principles.
Sure, yes.
Dave and I were on the same page. Now, Dave had a greater dedication to trade unions than anyone I had ever met. And that was one of the most interesting things, the difference between the UAW and the ILWU. I just told you, the UAW workers, or the auto workers I knew, they were interested in taking on the union. Dave knew. He was in the most democratic union in the country. He wanted to take on the employers. He didn't have any, although he did have plenty of beefs with the union, as we will talk about, particularly with Harry Bridges. But Dave's commitment to getting a fair shake for the working man and woman was something that was, I could see that deep commitment. I could see his principles, and I could see what an honest and fair person he was.
And then you can relate, it sounds like.
That's where I was coming from.
Sure.
So that was the most important thing to me.
Now, when David went to see you in 1970, he wasn't the president of our union, was he?
Oh, no.
No, he was just a longshoreman. He was a longshoreman.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as you corrected yourself, never say just.
Yeah.
I mean, I told my husband.
I catch myself.
Yeah. I married Dale McConaughey many years ago. Dale and I were together for 26 years before he passed. And Dale would say things like, he had worked, he had saved money. Should he get a boat? Should he do this and that? And I would always say to him, you were a crane operator. You can do anything. Because that was like the top.
Yeah.
Of course, now these days it's a foreman. But, back when, being a crane operator was something that everybody aspired to.
Sure, yeah.
The most skilled job there was.
Yeah, you're the point person you are the one unloading that, doing, especially in the age of containerization, you're the one unloading. Like, you're the pinnacle. You got to be on your game, is how I feel.
That's correct.
About those crane operators.
But it takes everybody. You have to have.
It does.
The UTR's got to get there on time. They got to, stay in the same lane. And the dock signals, they got to wave them up. And if the lids are coming over them, they got to, it's a team effort.
Yes, it is.
Complete team effort.
You're right. Yeah. And like I was mentioning in the last episode, it's just like a very efficient machine. Everybody, we're the clerks, everybody just working together. It's to me, it seems very efficient. The current process of, the way things are now.
Right.
And I attribute that to the fact that for, let's see, it isn't quite 100 years, but for 90 plus years, the ILWU has negotiated contracts in which they cover all that. So you know what to happen. You know what a time in lieu is. You know what happens when the job finishes early, and as medieval as it sounds, they want to sell you to another ship. What happens then, right? I mean, these things are all in the contract. And what people should know is, and I've heard you discuss this with other folks on your show, because I've listened to your show, and I love it, and it's terrific.
Thank you.
People should read the contract. Because that's what says, when they say, can they get away with that? Look in the contract.
That's right.
It's all there. It's for everybody to see. And again, that was a big difference. Because I've studied the labor movement and been close to working people my whole life, the difference between the UAW and the ILWU, well, now you're talking efficiency. We could talk about the difference between longshoremen and truck drivers. I mean, what happens in longshore is you got rules. Those rules are the contract. And it says who shows up, where you go, how you start, what if you want to break, what if there's a health and safety issue? Other unions don't have that. Truck drivers don't have that. So I think of the system with truck drivers, and it's not chaos, but it sure doesn't run like longshore does. No. And that's why the truck drivers need a strong union. And, they've been Teamsters have been trying for a long time. But why they need someone to kind of get that trucking part of it organized the way longshore is.
Well, yes. And what I'm hearing is the automation is really going to affect the truck drivers, because now there's like they have these Waymos, the self-driving cars, and that's going to be they're probably going to do it for truckers long distance, or that was something in the works. So I feel like that's like a big...
And you have absolutely hit, Marina, one of the key issues we need to talk about.
Yes.
If you were to say, you got one sentence, what's the main problem facing society today? I'd say income inequality. Mm-hmm. The fact that you have a handful of billionaires that control 50% of the wealth in this country, mm-hmm. and whatever the horrible numbers are, 70 or 80% of the people are at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And most people, as we know, are one paycheck away. So income inequality is the biggest problem I think is facing us. And then when you get down to local communities like the harbor, automation. Because automation isn't just going to affect the people on the waterfront. It's going to affect everybody. It's going to affect the dry cleaner and the chiropractor and the people that do child care, because it's putting people out of work. Mm-hmm. And it's going to wreck our communities. And that's why we have to take a stand against it. The economic impact on our communities. And I mean, I'm all in favor. If you were to say, well, what do you think the waterfront's about? I'd say protecting jobs and protecting the environment. And I'm in favor of protecting the environment. But if we have special rules to protect birds, why don't we have special rules to protect our communities from economic devastation? Mm-hmm. And we don't right now. The employers have free hand to do whatever they want. And when things are going good, they like to talk about how great the longshoremen are. Yeah, well, protect their jobs.
Right. Right. You go to Maersk, back in the days, it would be like 28, 30 trans operators and ships, UTRs. You go there, it's a graveyard.
And I think Maersk is the worst. And if we get to it, to talk about it today, when I was appointed to the Board of Harbor Commissioners by Mayor Garcetti, my second meeting was 2,000 people at the cruise terminal talking about Maersk and automation. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other story we could talk about.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into it. Yeah, let's talk about it. Tell me about that meeting because did you speak in that meeting?
In order to really answer that, let me tell you a little bit about how the port runs, because most people don't really understand.
Yes.
People think they work for the port. No. The Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach are what is called landlord ports. They manage the land. They don't hire longshoremen. The PMA does. They don't hire truck drivers. They are landlord ports. And as such, like any landlord, if you're a tenant and you want to make any improvements, you got to go to your landlord and say, this is what I want to do with the property. That's going to be what we talk about when we get into Maersk a little more. But first we got to talk about, well, who regulates it? What's the deal? And the port land is so extraordinarily valuable. It's governed by a special state law called the Tideland Trust Act. And the Tideland Trust Act says that all the ports in the state of California are held in trust for the benefit of the people of the state. Mm-hmm. And there are port authorities that run those ports. And the way the port authorities are supposed to get their directions is the Board of Harbor Commissioners. So our city government system is that we have a mayor, we have 15 city council people, and then we have 300 plus commissioners. And they sit on things like the Airport Commission, Water and Power, Parks and Rec. And there's a commission called the Board of Harbor Commissioners. 5 people, the mayor appoints them, terms of 5 years. You serve at the pleasure of the mayor. In fact, when the mayor appoints you, you get a letter to sign, and it is your resignation letter. And it is undated, and it means the mayor can fire you anytime he or she wants to. So you serve at the pleasure of the mayor.
Okay.
Depending, you more or less got to check in with the mayor on what's happening and what the mayor wants. Okay. Anyway, so there's 5 commissioners.
Let me touch on that.
Go.
The chief of police, the lady, right?
Kristen Crowley.
Yeah, exactly what you just said, that she signed the letter. It's a resignation letter. If the mayor doesn't like you, goodbye.
Right.
Right?
And that is the subject of a
to her.
lawsuit that's just been filed this week.
Right.
Where the former head of the fire department feels she was unfairly terminated. Right. And she's filed a lawsuit. Anyway, so back to our Harbor Commission. So for years, it was a struggle to get local representation. For the last 30, 40 years, there's always been an ILWU member on the Harbor Commission, okay? It started with, again, most of your listeners and maybe even Coach won't remember these people. Nate DiBiase.
I remember him.
Nate DiBiase was on the Harbor Commission. There were other ILWU representatives like Joe Radisich. Okay, he was on the Harbor Commission. Dave Arian was on the Harbor Commission, appointed by Mayor Villaraigosa kept on by Mayor Eric Garcetti, served for 8-9 years, became vice president of the Harbor Commission. Dave tragically was struck with throat cancer in 2018, passed away within 4 months. So there was a vacancy on the Harbor Commission. And typically there are people appointed from Pedro, Wilmington, and there was a labor seat. Well, they realized they'd get a twofer with me because I was both very active in the harbor community, but also very close to the ILWU and had the interests of the ILWU at heart. So Mayor Garcetti appointed me to fill Dave's seat in March 2019. Okay, so Dave passes January 2nd. My appointments rushed through committees, city council, because there's a big issue pending, and they want 5 commissioners. And out of respect for Dave during his illness, they didn't schedule this issue while Dave was sick. But once he passed, they knew they had to get it on the agenda. And that issue was laying the plans for the infrastructure at APM terminals, popularly known as Maersk, they said they wanted to automate, and the way they were going to do it is by installing battery-operated equipment that would be zero emission. So they applied for something, and we don't want to get too much in the weeds with this, but they applied for something called a Level 1 coastal development permit that would allow them to dig up the ground at Maersk, biggest terminal in the Port of LA, 500 acres, and lay the infrastructure so they could have equipment that was not human operated. The union fought it bitterly, and the union rallied the casuals, because all this stuff is interrelated. And we could talk about this outrageous situation with the casuals, where you had people spending 10 and 15 years of their life on hold, trying to get their book, trying to get their registration. So the casuals knew just what Coach said. If this passed, Maersk was going to be a graveyard. And all those casuals that were waiting for their B registration, I mean, typically, the employers are always the one that want to hold up registration. And they want to hold up registration because, of course, once you're registered, they're on the hook for PGP, Pay Guarantee Plan. So they don't want registered people. They want this casual, disposable workforce, right? So the issue was, what are we going to do about Maersk? The community came out. So there were hundreds and hundreds of casuals. And in addition, there were community members. And it was kind of the ILWU's finest hour. Because under then Vice President Gary Herrera, he rallied the community. He rallied local businesses to say, if this goes through, it's going to hurt our community. There's going to be a tremendous loss of jobs. So that was my second hearing. So as a commissioner, what you do is you listen to presentations from the staff at the Harbor Department, and then there's public comment, and then the commissioners get to ask questions. And my role as a commissioner is, I always felt, and this is the same way I felt as a lawyer, if you were my client and you didn't understand something, I didn't think that was because you were stupid. I thought it was because I wasn't doing my job, because my job was to explain stuff to you. So if you didn't understand it, that wasn't on you, it was on me. So I felt the same thing as a commissioner, that we were appointed as citizens, not as experts, not as industry people, not as bankers, as public citizens that were supposed to do what the Tidelands Trust said, protect the interest of the workers, all the stakeholders, the community, the employers, the longshoremen, the truck drivers, everybody. So when something was presented to me, I didn't just rubber stamp it as a commissioner. I wanted to know, what is this about? So if you told me this was a permit to put in new pipelines, I would say, what's going to be in those pipelines? Is it hydrogen? Is it something explosive? Is it gasoline? Is it water? How long? Who's going to take care of it if something happens? So I wanted answers. I wanted facts. I didn't want to just say, oh, I got lunch. Let's move along here and say yes. So that's what I did with Maersk.
Nice.
And people were very surprised because it was my second meeting. But my thing was, I don't care if it's my
You came
second
in hot
meeting.
ready. You were like, I'm ready.
Absolutely. So I read the stuff and I had questions. And of course, what those questions, I mean, in order to get a coastal development permit, Maersk had to file papers. And when I looked at their application, I realized it was total nonsense. There were questions like, will this result in any loss of work? And their answer was unknown. Well, that's not an unknown. And I knew enough from plant closings in Michigan to know that these companies don't come up with stuff on a week's notice. They got their plans for 2, 3, 4 years. They just aren't telling the working people how they're going to be screwed, hoping they'll sneak something, quietly through. So I asked all those questions of the person that was head of Maersk in Los Angeles then, John Oakes. And I was horrified. And because I keep stuff, because lawyers, papers, files, I happened to have a newspaper that was a picture of Dave Arian from the prior contract negotiations, and the headline was, "Take Us Along." And Dave's thing was, we aren't in opposition to change. We're just saying, don't leave us the crumbs. If you're taking the pie, make sure we get a good piece of it. Take us along. So I had that headline, and I had that newspaper, and I held it up to John Oakes. And I said, Dave Arian, former international president, former vice president of the Harbor Commission, here's what he said. So what I want to know is, why are you doing this? And I want to know 2 things. Productivity. How many more cans are you going to move? Because the leases, Port of Los Angeles and Maersk, specified not only that there was something called a MAG, minimum annual guarantee, but also a price per container. So as the terminal moved more containers, the port made more money. And it was my job as a commissioner to maximize the recovery to the port. So I wanted to know, what are you going to do about productivity and efficiency? And John Oakes' answer was, it's not going to increase efficiency. It's not going to increase productivity. And I said, well, why are you doing it then? And he said, because we want to eliminate jobs. We want to save money on labor.
That's what he said?
On the record, transcript. You can go back to that meeting and go to the site that says Port of Los Angeles, Harbor Commission, and go to the site that says videos of meetings, and you can hear every word that was said. And he said, yes, it's going to be a lot of layoffs, but we don't care. We're going to save money. So I heard that, and I thought, this is a no vote. I'm not voting for that.
So
Out of the 5 commissioners, I voted no, and the harbor commissioner from San Pedro, Anthony Perozzi, he voted no. 3 other commissioners voted yes, that they approved the permit. So there were many contentious meetings. There was another meeting of 2,000-3,000 people, and it dragged on through June, July, and August. And it finally was resolved with the intervention of Mayor Garcetti, who sat down with the parties and raised the issue of what were they going to do about training, and particularly if a lot of this was going to be automated equipment, mechanics training. And it led to, many, many years later, just a year or 2 ago, the opening of the mechanics training and repair facility on Terminal Island in a corner of the ground at Maersk. But that went through, and it was very contentious and very unfair. And it stands to this day, and as Coach said, all you have to do is go through Maersk and look at how little activity there is to know.
Were those 3 appointed by who? Those 3 that voted against us.
Well, one of them was a commissioner who had been there for, I think now he's the longest serving commissioner. He's probably been there for 14, 15 years, Commissioner Ed Renwick. Another commissioner was appointed by Mayor Garcetti from Wilmington, Commissioner Lucia Moreno-Linares. And
She voted no.
she voted yes.
In
She
favor.
said,
In
let
favor.
Maersk automate.
Oh,
What
boy.
was the
Okay.
since you were in the meetings? What was the rationale? What was there? What was telling them to say yes to that? Can you?
Yes, very easy. The executive director of the port and Maersk said you cannot consider the economic impact. It says you shall grant a coastal development permit. It doesn't say unless it's going to put a lot of people out of work and devastate the community. So they said, according to the law, you must vote yes. But these are questions, in terms of commissioners, of conscience. When I was on the Housing Authority from 1993 to 1998, the federal government said public housing like Rancho San Pedro and Dana Strand, now redeveloped Wilmington, Normont Terrace, the federal government said undocumented immigrants cannot live in public housing. And I refused to vote for that. I said, no, the people that have lived here for years. And if you have a family and one person's undocumented and 5 people have their citizenship, you can't put that whole family on the street. So I voted no. So there's times, and there's a legal theory for that says if you feel in your conscience it's wrong, you can vote no. I thought this was a clear no vote, that automation would not be in the interest of the workforce and the community. So I voted my conscience and what I thought the law, what the big picture of the law was.
Right. You are uniquely positioned, or you were uniquely positioned in that scenario because you are a lawyer. You do know the law. You do know how to follow the law, and that's interesting that you say that there is there's a, what did you call it? Something that says your conscience.
Well, there's actually, the legal theory is called nullification.
Oh, legal
I mean,
theory,
if you're
okay.
on a jury, they can say to you, this is what the law says, and you can say, nah, I'm going to vote the other way. I don't agree with that. Because it's the way you see it and the way you call it. Anyway, so that was quite a struggle.
Right. From what I read, I did a little research before our interview because I felt like I had to because, I'm meeting with Diane Middleton. You were released by Karen Bass as a harbor commission, and you said, it seemed like you were for sure not happy with it, but you said, I'm okay with this. I'm going to go my way. But I really feel in my heart that there should be 3 commissioners that are associated with the ILWU or with this community to speak on it, because what I read was there was someone from maybe Pico Rivera that is now on the commission. So not somebody that is here and feels the ramifications of the decisions that are made at the port.
Okay, there's a number of things you said. Let's kind of pick apart a couple pieces of that.
Okay.
One, there are 5 commissioners. Every mayor gets to appoint their own commissioners. And it may take them a couple months, but it's a change of administration, and that's what happens. So some of the 5 commissioners were held over, okay? And other of the 5 commissioners were new appointees. Now, I was appointed to fill Dave's 5-year term. I was appointed in March 2019. My term was up June 30th, 2019. So I was appointed to another 5-year term. Okay, so my term ran out June 2024. Historically, not written into law, there was 1 commissioner from Pedro, 1 commissioner from Wilmington, and a labor commissioner. Now, the concept of commissioners can be based on a lot of things. Normally, there's some sort of attempt at geographic diversity because it's a big city. And if you have something like the airport commission, you don't want 5 commissioners that live near the airport. You want people from different parts of the city. So the commissions have some aspect of diversity and different voices. And you don't want everybody doing the same thing. So technically, you don't want to say, well, I'm going to appoint a lawyer because they know the law. No, the city attorney is supposed to tell us the law. You want people from different backgrounds. Think of it as a jury. You want everybody coming together because the idea is that reasonable, solid citizens can listen to the facts and figure out who's jiving, who's telling the truth. The judge advises them on the law, and they make decisions. That's what commissions are supposed to be like. So it's not like we want 5 commissioners from San Pedro. It's okay if they're from all over, but we should have representation. Now, fortunately, we've had an exceptionally competent city councilman, Councilman Tim McCosker, who was elected in November of 2022. When he saw what was happening and the fact that there wasn't always going to be this representation of San Pedro, Wilmington, and labor, he authored a motion that was on the ballot in 2024. And what that ballot said is, on the Harbor Commission, there always has to be 1 commissioner from San Pedro and 1 commissioner from Wilmington. That passed. So right now, our San Pedro commissioner is Commissioner Lee Williams, and the commissioner from Wilmington is Commissioner Yolanda de la Torre. He didn't include a 3rd commissioner who was a labor commissioner. Okay. So I was up for reappointment, and I'm proud to say the ILWU, all the locals, were very satisfied with the job I was doing as a commissioner.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And to tell you the truth, a lot of other people were too. The community, and even the employers, because they liked the fact that there were questions being asked, and everybody said, don't always agree with what Commissioner Middleton's doing, but she's fair. And that's all we want. We want somebody who's fair, even-handed, and so on. Mm-hmm. So Gary Herrera by then was president of Local 13, and he was in close contact with Mayor Bass and repeatedly said, are there any plans to replace Commissioner Middleton? And the answer was no, no, no. And in fact, I was one of the first people in San Pedro that came out in support of Mayor Bass when she was a candidate. Mm-hmm. I told you, we talked before we went on record, and I said I'm fortunate enough to have a house above Cabrillo Beach with a big old deck with a lot of people. So I had an event, couldn't be a fundraiser because city commissioners can't fundraise for city offices. But I had a meet and greet for Mayor Bass when she was running.
At your home.
At my home, 100 people showed up. So 3 years later, when President Gary Herrera said to Mayor Karen Bass, are there any plans to replace Commissioner Middleton? Her answer was no, we're really satisfied with Diane. Okay, so my term was up June 30th. And Gary kept asking, anything new on Diane? Anything new on Commissioner Middleton? No, 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 no plans to replace her. Well, the rules say that the mayor has the right to appoint commissioners, including when their term's up, because it's a new appointment. Mm-hmm. But if the mayor doesn't do it in 45 days, the city council gets the right to. Term's up June 30th. Mm-hmm. I had until August 15th. On August 14th, I got a call from one of the mayor's representatives. The mayor is declining to reappoint you. Thank you for your service. Now,
what was when you got that call? What was going through your heart?
My
and
reaction
your mind?
was shock.
Sure.
Only because the mayor and her deputy mayors, they had all represented to me and to the ILWU, no questions, you're being reappointed. So, it's not that I accepted it. You don't have a choice.
Right.
When you're a commissioner, you serve at the pleasure of the mayor.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I understood that the mayor was making the choice not to. She was going to replace me with someone else. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's not how the ILWU saw it. And President Herrera was outraged. And again, if you go to the videos of the commission meetings, at the next commission meeting, Gary Herrera appeared, and under public comment, he looked right up at the camera and he said, Mayor Bass, if you're watching, I just want to tell you, you lied to the ILWU. You told me you had no plans to replace, and by then I was the Vice President Middleton, and you did it. So as far as President Herrera was concerned, Mayor Bass straight up lied, and the ILWU was not happy. So
Good for Gary.
there
Good
was
for
someone
Gary.
else replaced. Now, fortunately, because, I've had a history of 50 years of serving the community, served on 3 different major commissions under 4 different mayors, and I wanted to continue. And because I had 50 years of representing longshoremen, and they were absolutely wonderful about educating me to what the waterfront was about. So when I took a seat on the commission, I knew what a hammerhead crane was. I knew what a top pick was. I had represented hundreds of asbestos workers from the shipyards. I knew waterfront operations. And I wanted to continue to use that knowledge to do what I could for the community. So an opportunity developed. I talked with Councilman McCosker, and we decided that I should come on board, and I told him, I don't want to be a city employee. I don't want a penny. I've retired. I've closed my law firm. I want to do this on the basis of trying to help out. So Councilman McCosker appointed me to his staff as his senior advisor on port affairs.
Okay.
So I'm now working for Councilman McCosker, and I have the opportunity to continue to have some input in terms of jobs and the environment and what's happening on the waterfront. So I didn't accept it and go away. There was no choice. And the ILWU made their position known. And of course, we still strongly believe that labor needs a voice on the Harbor Commission, which it doesn't have now. Let's talk about a couple of other things about the Harbor Commission, though, okay? And about the port. The Port of Los Angeles is the largest port in North America. It is amazing. Last month, they moved 1 million TEUs, topping their previous record. I think it was in 2022, we moved 10 million TEUs, which was a record, and that was whatever it is, 800,000 a month. So it was an amazing record in terms of what the port's doing. I'm in favor of moving as much cargo as we can because it means jobs. But I think there's a lot of things other than TEUs. This is an extreme statement, but sometimes when you say extreme things, it capsulizes it and helps people understand. I would love it if the way we measured the success of the port wasn't just in TEUs, but how about this? Wilmington has terrible air because, of course, of all the refineries, the oil rigs that are in everybody's backyard, and also the pollution from the port. The UTRs, the container trucks that drive through the communities and so on. Wilmington has the highest rate of childhood asthma in the state. So my thing is, when we're talking about how the port's doing, why don't we talk about how fewer visits Wilmington mothers have to make for their kids with asthma to the hospital emergency rooms? Why don't we measure the success of the port by the health of the residents? Wouldn't that be a wonderful
That's wonderful.
standard?
That's-
Why don't we look at that? I look at things like we have something now called Alta Sea. And Alta Sea, we've all heard of the green economy, environmental jobs. Alta Sea is about the blue economy. Just like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we never heard of jobs like programmer and webmaster and so on. There are jobs being developed at Alta Sea nobody's ever heard of. Robotic engineering, undersea aquaculture, wave machines. Alta Sea is the future. It is the first marine lab in the country. And it is a center for UCLA and USC and other universities doing marine research. It is so exciting. My thing is we should be investing as much money as we can in Alta Sea to make it a reality. It will create the jobs of the future. We have a goods movement training center that is supposed to be a joint project of Ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. Dave Arian conceptualized it before he passed in 2018. It's stalled right now. We need to get that going. And it's going to be a campus that will be a hub for the ILWU, so you don't have to go one place for lashing training and another place for book learning, and you have it all in one center, everything centralized. But it also has to be, we have $110 million in state funds, and my thing is, those funds should be used to create jobs for those in our community who were not lucky enough to win the lottery and get a casual card. Not everybody's going to be a Class A or B longshoreman. What are the jobs out there for the other people in the community? How are they going to be trained? How are they going to get the benefits of this multi-billion-dollar port economy? They shouldn't be left on the doorstep. They should have a way in too. Right. And finally, public access investment plan. This was something that Commissioner Arian conceptualized in 2015. And his idea was that there should be a social compact, a contract between the port and the communities in the harbor, that the community bore the burden of pollution, traffic, industry, everything going through our town. What was the community going to get for it? So Commissioner Arian came up with this concept of the public access investment plan that said the port should take, and it's now set at 10% of its net operating profits, and the port should invest that in projects that benefit the community. And the two biggest projects thus far are what used to be called Ports of Call, but now is going to be West Harbor, an amazing complex that will offer visitors from all over the world the opportunity to see the Port of Los Angeles. And of course, just a mile or so from here, the Wilmington Waterfront Park, that has given the community of Wilmington a window on the waterfront. So those were done with profits from the port. And everybody thinks the port sends money to downtown LA. Nah, the only thing we send to LA is we reimburse the city of LA for the cost of the LA Fire Department and the LA Police Department, which provides services to the port, even though we have our own port police, which are whose members belong to the ILWU, just like the port pilots do. I mean, there are almost 20 ILWU unions that represent workers on the waterfront. Nobody knows that. Everybody thinks it's all Local 13. Right. But I mean, there's lots, named a couple of them, port police, the port pilots, the people that, Local 20 at Borax, the security guards, Louisa Grotz and Local 26, right. Lots and lots of locals. Anyway, so this idea of the port's got to give something back to the community. And the council office is making sure that they get every penny they're entitled to. And it goes to Wilmington and San Pedro for community projects.
Dan, here's an issue I have. The bridge is going to be closed down. How is that going to impact all the traffic into Wilmington? Have you guys talked about that, or is that on the agenda? Because once they close that bridge down, Wilmington's going to have a bunch of traffic coming by.
Okay, and let's talk about who's making those decisions, okay? First of all, the issue with the Vincent Thomas Bridge is that it is very, very old. The foundations, engineering people tell us the foundations are sound, but the decking on the bridge is worn and has to be replaced. Now, this has been many years in the works, and it's probably been 18 months that there have been a lot of meetings. Now, who's making these decisions? First of all, it is not the Port of LA. It is the California Department of Transportation.
Okay.
But there has been a working group called together of people from the Department of Transportation, the ILWU, the PMA, the Concil office, and they have been having these meetings, figuring out the best way to deal with the bridge closure. Now, one way is, first of all, there was the, should we close one lane at night, this and that, and everybody said, rip the bandage off. Close the bridge, do it in 16 months. So this working group has spent 18 months figuring out how to do it. Now, the first thing they're going to figure out is how do you route the traffic? And where is it going to go? And how do you get it to use? It'll take longer, no question. But how do you get it to use freeways and public streets and roads and not have all that traffic go through Wilmington? And the council office position is the first thing they should do is fix the streets in Wilmington, because they're in bad shape now before we have additional traffic. And I mean, I have been out there as Councilman McCosker's representative to see the areas around Drum and Blinn and all those streets where it's a hazard. I mean, they need to either have, and we're looking at a number of different solutions in terms of cul-de-sacs, traffic lights, different ways to deal with that traffic in East Wilmington that's really, really bad now. But there's no way around it, Coach. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have to bite the bullet and do the best we can because work has to be done.
This is what our show's about the history of the port, about the workings of the port. My dad's been down here for 43 years.
Right.
So he's got some history. I'm kind of just learning. Like I mentioned to you, I was a casual for 17 years. I went to school to be, when I got my casual card, I was going to school to be a teacher. That was my goal. And actually, I was an elementary school teacher in Broad Avenue right here in Wilmington. And then I had my children, and my focus was on that. And I was just, the casualing was just my side hustle, I call it. And then when COVID hit and work started ramping up, I fortunately had enough hours to get in as a B-book or to be an ID. And I feel like I didn't have that initial investment in what was going on in the port because it was just, like I said, my side hustle. It wasn't going to be, this was not going to be my career. But now that it is, I want to learn as much as I can, which is why we started this podcast and having women and people like you on, because I want to get the word out, because I'm not the only one out there that has this story. There were many casuals who were there for 17 or more years.
Right.
Who don't live so close and don't have a connection. And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to bring this connection.
And that's another question. I mean, I love this stuff so much. There's so much we could talk about. You know, people talk about nepotism, but what's the old saying? The old saying that with the old timers, when you did something on the job, your father knew about it before you got home.
Oh, yeah.
And now with that family connection gone, and yeah, I mean, it's a bigger discussion.
Right.
I mean, my family worked in the auto factories, and when my uncle, only one boy, 4 girls, so of course they didn't talk about the girls, but when the boy turned 18, my grandpa took him to the shop and said, hey, my kid just turned 18, what do you have for him?
Right.
And that's how it worked.
And I think that's a lot of industries
Dale
that work that way.
McConaughey, who was a surfer dude and a hippie backpacker and all that shit, he said when he turned 18, his father, who was one of the founders of the Inland Boatmen Union,
Okay.
his father came in and ripped off the covers and said, we're not recording, get your ass out of bed, it's time for you to go to work.
That's right.
And he took him down and said, what do you have for my kid?
That's the way it used to be.
And that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you, Diane. We're definitely...
a pleasure.
Let me come in for a hug.
Oh, Abby, you gotta get up.
Come here, yes. Let me come in for a hug.
Thanks again for listening. This has been On the Waterfront with Coach, hosted by Edward Barreras and Marina Barreras Hernandez. Production and engineering by me, Buddy Barreras, and recorded in collaboration with the Avalon Arts and Cultural Alliance. Proudly made in the heart of the harbor, Wilmington, California.